Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone has had a good day. For those of you who do not or have not met me, my name's Catherine Gibbons. I am Rugby Ontario's Coach Development and Community Rugby Coordinator. And I wanted to start by saying welcome and thank you for attending our first session of our Rugby Ontario Coach Webinar Series, Coaching Minor Rugby. So before we get started, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping for today. As you will see at the bottom of your screens, or as you may see, you'll have three icons, or you should. One will be a Q&A, one is a chat, and one is a raise hand option. We have disabled the chat option for tonight, but as you have questions throughout the presentation, if you wanted to drop them in the Q&A icon or function, Jocelyn and I will be monitoring that. And then at the end of the presentations, we will have an opportunity for people to ask questions out loud. And if you choose to do so, you can use the raise the hand function, and we will be able to take you off of mute to do so. So just for the outline of how tonight's going to go, each panelist will present. We will do a mini break to have an answer any questions specific to that presenter, and then the next panelist will start, and it will go that way with the larger, bigger discussion at the end. So before we get started, I would like to start by acknowledging that Rugby Ontario and our member clubs are situated on traditional Indigenous territories across the province. Rugby Ontario acknowledges that there are 46 treaties and other agreements that cover the territory now called Ontario. Tonight, I am presenting from Toronto, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. And with that, I would like to hand it off to Jocelyn to introduce our panelists for the night.
All right. Hi, everyone. So it's my pleasure to introduce our three panelists here. I'm not going to read their full bios, but you can find those on our website if you haven't had a look through them already. And I'm sure they'll speak a little bit to them as they present tonight. So we have, I'll start with, in the order they're going, Ryan Jones is going to lead us off, who's the Rugby Development Manager from Rugby Canada. Then we'll have Amanda Neal Robinson, the Executive Director of TURF. And we'll finish with Carl Erickson, an assistant professor at York University. So they bring a really interesting, unique perspectives. And we're hoping that between the three of them, you'll learn lots tonight. So with that, I'll send it over to Ryan to get us started.
Awesome. Sounds good. I'm going to do the awkward share my screen. Give me a thumbs up if we can see it. How does that look? Awesome. Great, thanks, and hey everyone, thanks for joining. Exciting to be in front of a bunch of coaches from Ontario and I hear from across the country as well. So those who don't know me, I'm the Rugby Development Manager with Rugby Canada, formerly with Rugby Ontario in a similar role. So my role is to help to support the growth and development of rugby across Canada. I'm also a part-time master's student. I actually work a little bit with Carl at York University, so kind of nice to be presenting with him and probably learning from him a little bit more tonight as well. Previously from Manitoba, I'm a coach, referee. I'm a board member at a club and have been in other clubs as well. Coach, educator, administrator. It's kind of sad. Rugby is kind of my life. So really excited to be presenting today. I have coached minor rugby. I've coached in schools, also coached junior rugby, senior rugby. I've coached different genders. And tonight I want to talk a little bit about my lens and kind of my philosophy. And as you'll see on the screen, how I win coaching minors. Before I do get started, I do want to recognize that we at Rugby Canada respect to acknowledge the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples of Canada as guardians of the land on which we're learning today. and connecting on today. Very thankful for to be on this land. I'm also based in Toronto, so the same traditional territory as Catherine shared earlier. So as I mentioned, my focus for this evening is how I win coaching youth. I want to talk a little bit about my philosophy and how that ties into how I win, and then a little bit of a best practice idea sharing from myself, and hopefully you can kind of flood the chat with some ideas as well. So the idea of winning and how we win coaching youth and in my opinion coaching anybody is really interesting. It's very outcome focused, and when we focus on the outcome, we sometimes lose the process and the meaning along the way. So how I win coaching youth is figuring out what's important now. So anytime I walk into a space, anytime I'm coaching young kids, I need to figure out what's important now. If I'm going into a classroom or working with a group of young athletes, what's important now? That may be just learning to move. Maybe we just need them to move around in space, run around circles and cones and roll around a little bit and figure out how their body moves. Maybe that's what's important now. It could be playing games, throwing a ball in the middle and saying, hey, we're going to play 5v3, and you're just going to play and try and figure out how to move in space. Or we're just going to let them play rugby because they haven't maybe played much before in their life. We might need to teach them the game, or they might need to learn the game. So maybe the first 20 minutes of practice is just setting up a screen and we're going to watch a bit of rugby. We're going to learn a little bit about the game, something new. Maybe we saw a clip that we could bring into our practice. Potentially those individuals who are a little bit further developed in their life and maybe have hit their growth spurt already, maybe they need to be challenged a little bit. So what's important now for that individual as they walk into the space is to feel connected and be challenged in a different way. That may look like, hey, you've made 12 passes off your right hand. Can you make some off your left? Or, hey, you've scored 5 tries right now. Great. But how about we set up the daisy picker on the edge? And then maybe that's what's important for that individual as well, is bringing them into the game. Leading to my final point here on what's important now is connection. So maybe what's important is just recognizing that somebody's walking into a space and celebrating the fact that they're there and we're connecting with them, or connecting individuals with each other. So anything I do, any coaching activity, whether it is coaching minors, which is obviously the focus of this evening, or coaching the university program that I'm at, or a high school program, or the way I approach my job, it's what's important now, right? And if we can identify what's important now, what's important in that space, then I believe we'll win. So that kind of takes me into my philosophy, and again, my personal coaching philosophy. So if you take some pieces from this and are able to kind of apply or resonate with any of these pieces, fantastic. But again, talking through my lens as a coach, my philosophy and my objective, my outcome is that players want to come back next week, next month, next year. I don't care what the outcome is on the field. I don't care what the game looks like, right? I want them to come back next week, next month, next year. And for me, there's 3 things that allow that to happen. The first one is building competence, right? So are they learning something new, right? Do the athletes, the individuals who walk into your space, learn something new that day? We're building competence, right? Are they improving? Are they getting better, right? Improving might be, again, they not passing very well off their left hand. So we practice that and we get them an opportunity to do that. And then we can recognize that they've improved in that space and they've got better, right? So are we building competence in those athletes and those individuals in that space? Okay, the next piece for me is connection, a really important part of I think everything that we do. connecting with each other, connecting with our athletes, connecting with parents, other individuals, other coaches, the referees. But in the coaching minor space, right, are they forming relationships? Do we create an environment where athletes and individuals in that space are connecting with each other? Are they building relationships? How do we measure that? Are they talking to each other at water breaks, right? When we're going to eat the oranges on the sideline, are they having little interactions and sharing with each other, right? And do they know that I care about them, right? Positive coaching is such an important aspect in everything that in young athletes' lives, right? Making sure that the athletes know that you as a coach care about them will make them want to come back, right? It'll make them think about you as an individual and as a person, and it'll make them want to learn from you, right? So do they know that you as a coach care about them, right? Again, a really important piece of my coaching philosophy. And then the final piece is fun. And fun could mean many different things to many different people. For me, it's that look on their faces. Are they enjoying themselves? Are they running around laughing and giggling? Sometimes we see a group of kids off to the side and they're kind of messing around with each other, and might get a little frustrated or mad, but maybe we ask ourselves in that moment, actually, are they just enjoying themselves? And do we need to let them enjoy themselves for a moment and then bring them back in later? Or maybe we come to them and figure out what they're doing and play with them. And then the final piece from the fun space is, did everyone leave with a smile? Right? Is a kid walking away with their head down and they're a little bit frustrated, or they didn't do something quite well? Can we intervene there and say, hey, actually you did this really well, or think about something really positive, or give them something to look forward to, right? So did everybody leave with a smile? So again, for me, how I win coaching youth, what's important now, potentially in a space I'm looking at, the week before we built competence. We taught people how to evade a defender really well. But in that moment, maybe some athletes or some individuals, some youth, got left behind because they weren't able to do it so well. They got stepped a lot. So what's important now in that next session for me is connection and bringing people together and making sure that we're having fun all the way through that. So that's kind of it for my sort of formal, we'll say, presentation and conversation. I will say a lot of this stuff and a lot of the way that I think is obviously influenced by a lot of different coaches. It's also influenced by the readings that I've done through the Masters in Positive Youth Development. So really looking forward to hearing what Carl has to say on that space. But before I leave us, I do want to just pop up this slide here around best practices, and I'll share a few resources that are available to you as well. So I love to come to these types of webinars and presentations and walk away with something. So hopefully here there's something on this list that you might not have thought about that you maybe can take away and implement in your space. So I'm just going to pull on a couple key ones that I think are really exciting and fun for me. The first one here is the skill zone and game zone. And it may not be new to everyone, but it's fairly new to me in the last few years. It's this idea that if we're going to build a practice that's around any kind of skill, really focused, we should be playing games as much as possible. So let's create a zone where there's a game happening, and then there's the little skill happening over here. So one coach is running the game, the other coach is running that skill, and then we swap over. So we're constantly applying the skills that we're learning into a game environment and being really focused on that. Everything worth a point. At the end of some practices, I'm walking away and kids have got 3,000 points somehow, right? Because every time they made a pass, they got a point. Or every time that they used good footwork, or they caught the ball with two hands, or they ran with the ball in two hands, they got a point. and they're counting their own points because it's impossible for me to count, right? But at the end of the day, they're focusing on that really specific thing that's going to get them that point, which is hopefully going to build some confidence for those individuals. So everything worth a point. Free play time. It'll be interesting to see if Carl kind of talks a little bit about this, but just that opportunity to step back and, hey, coaches are hands off. You've got rugby balls in your space. Go play. Figure out a game, come up with something. Maybe you're doing something by yourself. But how often outside of practice do kids get the opportunity to play with a rugby ball by themselves without any instruction? Maybe that's a good opportunity for them to try some of the things that we're learning in the space. No lines. It's probably the only negative thing I've got in there. I see this a lot coaching any level of rugby. Just what do you think about going to an airport? How fun is it standing in the line waiting to go through security, or when we're waiting for our at Subway and we've got 10 people ahead of us, right? Lines aren't fun, right? So what can we do differently to try and avoid those lines and create a little bit more chaos or excitement within our practices? And then the last piece I thought was kind of interesting was parent fences. So instead of having cones up, we'll get our parents involved who are sitting there watching practice anyway, and let's just wrap them around, and they'll be the fence or the zone for those kids. Really exciting way to maybe connect the parents into what the kids are doing and get them involved. So other pieces up there as well. I'd encourage you in the chat over the next hour or so, if some kind of cool ideas of what you do in your space pop up into your head, please share that, and hopefully we can walk away with a back pocket full of really cool and interesting, fun ideas for kids. And just a final piece, there's going to be a lot of resources, I'm sure, thrown at you today, just a few ones that I just wanted to highlight to make sure that you're aware. See, we've got the HSBC Rookie Rugby resources on rookierugby.ca. There's also a new NCCP Rookie Rugby coach training that's just been developed. So it'll be rolled out hopefully next year. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But tons of resources on there, free and available to you. The World Rugby Coaching Children workshop and resource hub is really strong. And then coach.ca, there's some formal learning and free workshops on there too. So if you haven't checked that out, please do. And I know Amanda's going to talk about. I didn't put it up there. Just I didn't want to take away your thunder, but Amanda's got some really cool resources that they've built over at Turf too that she'll talk about. With that said, happy to take any immediate questions, or we can hold that to the end if needed.
And I just know we had one piece here asking about if our slides and other resources will be made available. And yes, we can certainly do that. I'm making an assumption all of you are okay with us sharing the slides, but I think that's fair to say. So yeah, any of our resources and the slides can all be sent out. Another question here, would it be possible to create a rookie rugby focused Google Doc where coaches can all add the resources they use? Yeah, we could probably set something up like that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, good opportunity.
Ryan, while we're on you, I'll maybe ask you one question that came out of some of our initial surveys around sort of managing minor practices in particular with numbers. So if you have a whole lot of numbers, or maybe not so many numbers, or you don't know how many numbers you'll have on a given day, how do you maybe manage planning a practice for large, small, or inconsistent numbers?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, certainly a challenge. I think something that I always do is, if I'm very games based in the way that I coach, especially with young kids. We're not kind of doing anything that is sort of small individual skill type work. So it would be things like we're going to have more people in attack than defense versus having, say, it has to be 7 versus 5. or things like that. But playing a lot of games, it allows you to have kind of opportunities to, you don't necessarily need all of the numbers to be there. So setting up those kind of small-sided games and opportunities for people to play, and having that outcome as well, the beginning of each practice. A really powerful statement that was said to me in a coaching course was, by the end of this session, the athletes will ... And then whatever that answer is, we should be able to plug that in. And if we have 30 players, then 30 players will be able to do this. If we have 3, then they should be able to do that as well. And we should be able to do that. Any number of kids.
Awesome. Give us a second in case there's anything else for Ryan before we move on. Oh, Ryan, do you have any insight on coaching mixed ability players? Even though we might not have a mixed abilities program per se, how do you maybe incorporate that into your minor program overall?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that the most important thing is to connect with that individual and connect with that person, and see what level of support they may or may not need. Don't make any assumptions that someone with less skill or a differing ability can't do something. Let's work with that individual, make that connection with the individual to understand what they need. And if it's multiple people, then again, the same. Learn about those individuals, make those connections, and should be able to integrate them well.
Awesome. Right. Well, I think we'll move over to Amanda then. I'll let you take it from here. And if you still have questions that come up for Ryan, anyone, feel free. We'll come back to discussion in between each and at the end. So don't feel that you won't get a chance to have an answer.
Sorry, folks, getting myself together, just getting my life together here. And thanks for making the time. I believe I'm going to share my screen. I don't know if that's real or not. Can you see that? Can someone tell me audibly?
We're not seeing anything yet.
Well, that would be a problem. Oh, that's why. Duh. Hang on. You know, I'm cute, but I'm not too bright sometimes, right? Here we go. We're gonna do
all the pandemic years.
There. Okay, now you can see stuff, right?
Perfect.
Yeah. So I was a bit ambitious, and I got some media in this presentation as well. So fingers and toes crossed this works. Otherwise, it will be 6 to 7 minutes shorter than we planned, or I planned, I guess. Here we go. So put me in, coach. Creating a safe, fun, and inclusive and engaging minor rugby program starts with you. I made some notes on this just because I didn't want to wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh, why didn't I say that? And just toss and turn. So if you see me looking down, it's because I'm doing that. And it's just trying to reduce some anxieties for myself later on. So this is my minor rugby mixtape to you. I don't take myself too seriously as the executive director of Turf, but I am very serious about play. These are, you know, from my viewpoint or my lived experience, this could very well differ from yours. The idea is that, you know, like that, there's something in here that you find that you can take with you on your personal knapsack as you go along on your on your coaching journey. I have the pleasure of being the executive director of Turf and working with some fantastic young people in developing and making sure that young people across the city of Toronto have access to the sport. And it's a real honor and a privilege to be able to say that I can do that and then also do it as well. So I just want to go through some agreements, expectations, and outcomes. Please use the chat. You can also use the Q&A as well, but I'm going to ask some questions that are a bit reflective. If you feel like sharing and engaging in that, I encourage you to do that. If not, no pressure at all. If you are in the chat, to be nice. In terms of expectations or what you can expect to get out of this, I love to share things. So I'll have a bunch of resources for you at the end, and you'll get this wonderful presentation as well. And I'd like it that you get something that you can apply and use right now, or something you can put in your pocket and use a little later on. What I'm talking about today is all stuff I know you know. I know you know, but part of my goal tonight is to be a bit of an earworm. Remember this song? Can you hear it? No? I'm playing Rick Astley, Never Gonna Give You Up. It's an earworm. It's one of those songs that gets stuck in your head. And I want this presentation to just get lodged right in the back of your mind. And whenever you hear this song, when you're in an elevator, we're in the grocery store, I want you to think about all of this. I tell you how I'm feeling. Understand. All right, enough of that, Rick. We're moving on. So tonight, it's all about you. And this is what we're going to discuss today. It's about you. We're going to do a bit of a check-in, your team, letting you know that you are a builder, that you drive impact, and that you can improve, because that's why we're all here, is that we want to improve how we're interacting with young people, how we're delivering programming, how we're building programming. So this is all about you. It's all about you. This is my mixtape to you, my love in a mixtape to you. So we're going to get started with a check-in and just give yourself 1 point for each of these 5 things if they apply to you. So this morning, if you woke up naturally without an alarm and you felt really refreshed, give yourself a point. If at some point today you drank a glass of water, and not water with coffee in it or tea in it or beer, just straight water, give yourself a point. If you've eaten something nutritious, and that could even just be an apple or an orange or a banana or a vegetable, whatever, avocado, if that's your thing, give yourself a point. If while you're going through your day, you were involved in some conflict or something that my toddler, oh, he loves to sing. If you were involved in some sort of conflict, that you're able to package it away and be able to move on and move forward and not have it disrupt you or sit in the back of your monkey mind bothering you through the day, give yourself a point. And then finally, if you enjoyed your commute, maybe your commute was really just rolling out of bed and going to your desk, or maybe you had a slightly longer commute. You were on the highway or having to drive into the office. If you enjoyed yourself through your commute today, give yourself a point. So with this grading system here, you should have at least three points to be in a good place to be able to support someone else. And that's what you're doing as coaches. You're going in and supporting young people through their day. It's a small part of their day, right? But it's a really important part of their day, I think. You are stewards of the game. You are stewards of childhood, and it's a really important role that you play, whether you're a coach or you're a coach admin, or you're on the other side of supporting the sport. It's a really important role that you play. So making sure that your physiological needs, so that you're well rested, you're hydrated, you've eaten, that you're not in emotional turmoil, and that you're in a good headspace is really important when you're going to meet other people, especially if they've not woken up naturally, or they haven't had any water today, or in our case, a lot of the times, a lot of young people haven't had anything to eat. They're in conflict at home, they're in conflict with their teachers, they're in conflict with their friends. They hate having to take the TTC or whatever it is, bus to get to and from your school to home to your program site. So you got to make sure that you're in a good space first in order to be able to support someone else who might not be. And that's something that's really important while you're even thinking about going into your programming, is making sure that you're doing that check-in with yourself. I love this. You can't pour from an empty cup. So you got to make sure that you're good first in order to be able to really support others. And if you're not, ask for help. If you're not, it's okay to tap out. If you're aren't going to be able to be the leader that your kids need in that moment, ask for help, because they deserve the best and you deserve to give them your best as well. And that's okay. Because every interaction we have with young people builds, and it's important that we do our best in such a short season, in such a short period of time, to be able to have it as the most positive experience as possible. You could be the very best part of their day. Like I said, if they don't get along with their teacher, they don't get along with their family, they don't have any friends, or maybe they're in a fight with their friends, the conversation that you have with them, walking to the pitch or after practice could be that moment, like the one silver lining that they've had in the day. So it's really important that you make sure that you're good so that you can help support others. So one of my favorite marketers is Seth Godin, and he always sends these great little emails every day with just kind of thoughts to think about. So for you today, I'd like for you to think about this, filling in the blank. People like us do this. People like us do this. I would say, based on what Ryan's presentation shared with us, is that Ryan would say, people like us do this, win, right? With his acronym, right? What's important now? Thinking people like us do this. People like us say, what's important now? And that's important to him and his culture and how he builds his team and develops his team and builds culture in his team. So as we go through this presentation, and maybe even later on when you're sitting with your club partners and friends or colleagues, is have a think about this question and see what answers you come up with, because that will help you, have a better sense of what's important to you in terms of your culture, the culture you're trying to build or create, and what you'd like to nurture, and what's the same and what's different between you and the rest of the coaches that are supporting minor rugby at your club or institution. And it's important because this is an alarming stat. This is from 2016 in the Washington Post. 70% of kids quit sports by age 13. By 2019, that had dropped to age 11, which is just wild. You can look at Canadian Tire Jumpstart's State of Sport report that's been released during the pandemic to get a better idea of how that's impacting COVID, or the fallout from COVID, or the impacts of COVID are impacting sport across the country. But there's been this downward trend with regards to continued participation in the sport for the past few years. This is all the more alarming when you realize that, on average, it's 2.86 years before a child decides that they're not interested in participating anymore. That could be one sport, that could be all sport. We know it impacts girls in sport much more significantly. There's, I think, a 60 to 80% drop off by the time they're 12. And if they're not doing sport at age 12, then they're not doing anything by the time they're 30. So really crucial years that we are working with young people in sport. And this means 2.86 years. That's 2 seasons. That's 2 summers. That's what, eight weeks. When you start to think about breaking down that time, the moments that you spend with a young person on the pitch is so vital to having them to be able to continue and want to continue playing. Sorry. I thought this was really neat. This is from Changing the Game project. And from this, they found out, they were exploring why kids are leaving sport. And there were 5 things that were problematic. And then 5 things that were, I'm so sorry, pardon me. I am so sorry. So there's 5 things that kids are looking for when they are participating in sports. So what I like about this is that you can use these 5 things as a measurement to see if you're meeting the expectations or the general expectations that kids are looking for in a coach, in a sport, in a team, in an environment. This is really simple. This is something you can ask every practice in a kind of creative way. This is something you could ask the parents, you could ask the kids, you could, ask your fellow coaches, you could have like regular check-ins in and around this. But this is just really, really clean. It's really, really clean to see and what the expectations are with regards to supporting children in this sport. Sorry. It's important to know that leadership can be measured, and it's important that it is measured to be able to deliver on your programming. Wow, so sorry. This is terrible. I apologize. I don't know what's wrong with me with this. So talking about leadership can be measured. So one of the things that we do at TURF when we talk about leadership, because what we do is we build leaders and we help support the leadership development of young people so that they can go out into community and model the way and inspire more leaders. And that's how we're committed to growing the game. So one of the tenets of leadership that we like to follow is the idea of follower-centered leadership. It's best explained by a shirtless dancing guy. And I'm hoping that my audio and video work. And Jocelyn, if it's not working, can you just vocally come on and tell me to move on? It's not working. That'd be great. So let's see if this will work. Oh. Oh man.
Doesn't want to play.
Just my luck. It's a great it's a great presentation. So we will move on from there. What I will say is that you can watch this video. I show it every year when we're doing staff training at TURF. But one of the idea of this is that with follower-centered leadership, your action should be easy for someone else to be able to pick up and do. It should be easy to replicate. It should be fun. It should be engaging and inviting people in. And the key person you want to involve is that first person that comes along and says, yeah, I want to follow you. Yeah, I like what you're doing. Because they're going to help drive more people to following you. And that's what you want, right? That's relationships. That's people coming to your program, coming to your space, adopting your team culture. I'm so sorry. So you'll get the link when you get a chance to watch this video a little bit later on. There's a couple of coaches that really make it easy to follow. One of them, of course, is over at TURF, and that's Coach Spence. When everybody has to do push-ups, everybody has to do push-ups. He gets down and does push-ups too. Everybody's doing push-ups. It's putting everyone on the same page and making sure that we're all on the same level and we're all doing this together. And I love that. I know Coach Bryce with his kids likes to give them different leadership opportunities within his programming. So it could be attendance, could be choosing the activity to do. But developing and creating leadership opportunities is a great way to keep kids involved and engaged and keep them coming back to your program as well. And I think the other thing to remember is that sometimes some of the stuff you hate to do about the scope of work you're doing is someone else's dream, right? So it might be boring attendance, but to a young person, it's a way for them to be somewhat empowered. So think about some of those things that you don't like to do or you're not really keen on doing, and seeing maybe there's a way to engage one of your participants in that form of programming. So next we're going to talk about your team. Fingers and toes crossed that this slide works too. Otherwise, like I said, this is going to be a much shorter presentation than I planned for. I don't think it's going to work for me, are you? Oh man, I'll put all the links in later. So I like to take inspiration from unconventional places. I love Sesame Street. I love the old school Sesame Street in particular. And perhaps you'll remember this. If not, you'll get the link to the video to watch it later on. There's a clip here where Bert and Ernie go fishing. And Bert is on the boat. He's got his hat and his fishing rod, and he's frustrated because he's not catching any fish. And Ernie's there just, being Ernie, laughing, having a good time. Bert's saying he's frustrated that he's not caught anything. And Ernie's like, well, you're doing it wrong. You gotta call to them. And Bert thinks this is silly. You don't have the right tools to do this. Calling the fish, they're gonna come. Yeah, right. Let's see how that works. So what Ernie does is he goes, here, fishy, 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 fishy. And then a fish jumps into the boat. And Bert's mind is just blown. He's like, what? Do that again. So Ernie does it again. Here, fishy, 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 fishy. Another fish jumps into the boat. It happens 3 or 4 times, and the dynamic that they are ends as the dynamic that they are. But one of the reasons I really like this is that it really, for me, demonstrates the importance of building a team and building a program, right? Bert is using a traditional method. He's using a rod. He's got all the tools and resources. He's in a boat. He's got everything, but he's not getting the result he wants. But he keeps doing the same thing over and over and over, and it's not netting anything. Ernie comes in with a different plan. It gets poo-pooed on. What does Ernie do? He talks in a loud, friendly voice, shouts really, to the fish in the lake. And he doesn't say, here, fish, once and expects it to come in. He says, here, fishy, 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 4 times. Here, fishy, 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 fishy. And then the fish come. Because you can't just say a message once and expect someone to remember it. We hear messages about 7 times before it gets lodged in our memory, and we can recall it. So when you're thinking about building your program or building your team or doing your outreach or inviting folks into your space, think about, how can I get this message out 7 times? 7 different ways, maybe it's a frequency, but think about that when you're looking at your outreach and you're maybe not getting the result that you're hoping for when you're sitting there with your fishing rod. Is how can I think about this perhaps just a little bit differently? The other thing to know, as a coach, you're a builder. You're building teams, you're building programs, you're building experiences. You're a designer. Essentially, you're building things, you're designing things. And with that in mind, you really got to think about the whole and not just focus in on what am I going to do this week, right? It's the story that you're building in, what journey are you taking people on, and how does that start before they even come to your program? Like, how do they find out about you? How do you build a relationship? Sure, this video is not going to work either, but it's a great one too. Which leads into a project that we've been working on over at Turf. It was a 3-year labor of love called Everyone's Game, a toolkit on how to create safe, welcoming, inclusive spaces for young people to access sport. It started off with, we didn't see what we were needing in order to be successful. And it allowed us to do some exploration. We consulted with community, and we were looking at some existing programs that were out there and some needs that were being identified by Parks and Recreation Canada, and thought, oh, there's a space for us here. So from this toolkit, which is a physical toolkit, there's also a digital one as well. You can go on our website, thiseveryonsgame.com. To download that, we developed a peer-to-peer training program designed specifically for youth, where they can learn learn some of the skills and be able to better advocate for themselves and for their needs and create welcoming places for others to join in. Once again, another great video. You guys got it's like, you know what this is? This is going to be like your loot bag at the end of a party. You're gonna have all the fun stuff in there, and you know, like the popsicle whistle and some erasers as well. But this is a good one as well. And I like to talk about this because this is something that's really important when we're looking at building programs at Turf. And it's the idea of the curb effect. So what's a curb? Like a curb in the road, right? That little cutout on the sidewalk. And for us, that's kind of everyday occurrence. You see that all the time. You go, okay, yeah, it's a curb. But at one point, that was really novel. Curbs themselves, I mean, they can be made a couple different ways, but generally they're made of really hard rock granite, and they're really deep, and their purpose is to keep the road in and keep the non-road out, right? So they used to be really, really deep, really, really, really high. It's really challenging to get around if you have mobility issues. It was in the you'll get the link in this video. They started kind of guerrilla styles, going out and cutting curbs so that people could get access. And what started off as trying to be around mobility, someone with a physical impairment that needed that was going to benefit from the support, is that they found that it wasn't just the folks in wheelchairs, which they thought that this was for, but it was also, you know, at the time, mothers with strollers. It was also, you know, young kids on bikes. It was also those that might have be walking with a cane. And the idea is that when we're looking at our programming, how can we make things easier for those that are typically the most excluded from participating, right? And if we can be really intentional about making it easy for them to be involved, it's easier for everyone, and it's more enjoyable for everyone. And, you know, from, you know, looking at the admins in the internet here, there's a lot of things that we do as administrators to make it easier for us, because we got a lot of work, to do. But sometimes in doing that, it makes it really challenging for someone else, right? If they don't have access to technology, if they, you know, they don't speak English. There's a myriad of different things. So when we're building or creating programming, opportunities, activities, you've got to think about, well, how can we make this even easier for someone to be able to come out and participate? Is the location that we're running programming the best place? Like, how far of a walk is it from the bus stop? Or, you know, is there a way we can make this easier for someone to say yes? There's tons of reasons for people to say no. How can you make it easier for someone to say yes? So when you're going through and creating more programming, think about the curb, cut out the curb. There's a structure. How can I cut this out and make it easier for one person I have in my mind, but I know it's going to impact so many other people because it's going to be easier for everyone. You drive impact. You are a really important role on this team, and the success of sport and the sport of rugby is really, you know, on your shoulders, right? It's the relationships you build. You know, you got those two and a half years to make someone fall in love with the game, and to want to come back. And whether that's from minis to juniors or juniors to seniors, it's really important role that we play when we're interacting directly with children and youth. One of the ways in which we do this is we focus at Turf on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I love to nerd out to this. This is also the basis of everyone's game, our toolkit on how to create safe, welcoming, inclusive spaces. And I think it fits in quite well with the conversations that we're having today. A lot of the work that Turf focuses on is around making sure that pillar one is satisfied. So in the communities that we work in, like I mentioned, a lot of kids might not necessarily have something to eat. So we have snacks, we have water, we give them access to some clothing, you know, if need be. So And then we also look at other supports depending on the needs of the communities or the individuals that we're serving at any time. So we really like to make sure that we're making sure that those psychological needs and those safety needs are being met in order to be able to help someone get up to self-actualization, in order to be the very best version of themselves on the pitch. A lot of the work that, you know, I think Ryan's talking about is really around what would be our pillar 2, this like love and belonging, making sure that people are feeling included, that they have strong relationships with you and each other, and building team culture is so important, and being able to give someone that. And what's unique about us is that we're not basketball, we're not baseball, we're not soccer, we're not the big 3, we're not hockey, big 4. So what do we have that's different, or what can we provide that's different in the way that we develop and steward team culture or club culture within our teams? And then Carl is absolutely going to touch base on this, is self-actualization through positive youth development. And that's when, you know, that's what you really want to get someone to, is that you know, being the very best version of themselves through the sport. And that's why I love the game. I love what we do, is there's so much opportunity through that. And there's so many practical hands-on skills and attributes and characteristics that we can learn through doing the sport, and how we are greeted before we get to the pitch, how we work with each other on the field, how we work with opponents and congratulate them, how we win, how we lose, how we talk about ourselves, how we talk about each other. I love the game, and I love the rugby community for this very unique way that we do work through our game. Got to do everyone's game plug if you haven't noticed. So I mentioned earlier, we talk about in everyone's game, we go through these 3 pillars, and we have a bunch of activity-based, it's an activity-based toolkit. It's really fun. There's games that you can use to build into your programming. They can be part of your warm-up, or part of your cool down, or part of your leadership training programming. Really happy to talk with you about any training that you might be interested in for you, your coaches, your youth leaders, and being able to have access to this. What's really cool about this is, well, I think it's really cool. You might not think it's cool. I think it's cool. Is it's worth an NCCP point, so an education point. So if you need to bone up on your points, get everyone's game training in, and we can make sure that you get the point accreditation to your locker number. And then, you know, finally, you can improve, right? That's why we're here. We want to be better. We always want to be better. I love sport and the idea of Kaizen, like continuous improvement, right? That's what's so wonderful about athletics, is that you're always trying to be better. Never like, well, I did all right. No, you want to be good. You want to keep getting better. You want to keep pushing. You want to keep pushing. You push yourself. You push others. So in being here today, you're saying I can improve, and we can all improve, right? So some ways that you can do that is through some resources. Everyone's game, top, check it out. Coach Association of Ontario, they got some really good ones there. So there's some freebies, and then there's some pays, ones you have to pay for, but all really, really good. Sport for Life Canada's got some great resources. They've been doing some virtual training, but they also do in-person training as well. Definitely check them out. And then finally, High Five. I highly encourage you to check out High Five. They do a number of different programs, but they're one around healthy child development, I think, is really crucial for coaches that are working with children between the ages of 5 to 12, just to keep in mind. And they've got some great resources too. If you're in Toronto, I believe some of the training might be free through the City of Toronto, but you can also check within your municipalities. Most municipal organizations have High Five accreditation, like anyone that's being employed through a municipality and is working in their rec department has to have High Five. Likewise, Boys and Girls Clubs do it, and there's a lot of other bigger or networked partner organizations that use a High Five accreditation as a means of quality assurance or program assurance. So, you know, I would strongly encourage you yourself, or for you and your club to look or consider getting High Five training. And summary. 6 things. Could this been an email? Maybe, but you wouldn't have heard me be upset about my my videos not working. So first, check in with yourself. Check in with your team. Be like Bert when you watch it. You're gonna love it. No, don't be like Bert. Be like Ernie. Who did this slide? Who did this slide? Find easy ways for others to follow you. Ask yourself or your minis if you are consistently being what kids want in a coach, and then level up your skills in your program. Those are the 6 things to remember when you're thinking about this presentation, when you hear Rick Astley later on in the future. And finally, stay in touch. Amanda at turfrugby.ca. I'm easy to find. I like chocolate. And apparently I put together presentations where the video doesn't work. And that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda. I know it's disappointing we don't have the videos, but people go and watch them. There's some great stuff in there, and I really appreciate your rendition of some of those. So I'm sure it'll be more memorable in some ways. If anyone has any quick questions for Amanda now, we can take those. Otherwise, we will move on to Carl, and we'll get to come back to some big questions at the end. But I'll give us a minute. Carl, you can get your stuff up and ready, and we'll just see if any other questions come in specifically for Amanda before we move on. All right.
Is that showing up as visible in the proper mode?
Oh. Yeah. All right, we'll let you take it away, Carl.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Jocelyn and Catherine, for the opportunity to be here. Thanks to everyone who's attending for making this happen. And I've been loving just listening to what Ryan and Amanda have been saying. It's awesome stuff. And to be totally honest, you don't necessarily even need me. My presentation really, sorry, I'm just going to get what time we're going here. I'm coming from the academic, from the research side of things, and the short version of my presentation is everything that Amanda and Ryan said. It's true. Research says it's true. It's meaningful. You should do that stuff. But that's kind of the short version here. But beyond that, I'll try and maybe sort of talk about how the research on youth sport, youth development might maybe sort of aligns with some of our conversations here. So I am a university professor, an academic, a researcher. I'm at York University in Toronto in the School of Kinesiology and Health Science. I played rugby for many years and coached mostly in the minors and junior levels for a number of years. And those experiences coaching really kind of are what drove me into the research side of things and the academic side of things. These are the questions about what's going on here. How do things work? How can we do things better? And so that's what I do. That's what I spend my time is trying to answer those questions. So that's sort of the frame that I'll be talking about today. And while we're specifically talking about rugby and minor rugby in this particular setting, when we're working with young people, that means we're thinking about child development, right? We're thinking about human development. So I'll be kind of layering in I'll be kind of coming at it from a fairly big picture perspective in terms of principles, evidence-based principles and research-based ideas and concepts that merge both sort of the research that's done on youth sport, on child development, a little bit on some of the systems of sport and systems of youth sport. But okay, so we'll get started here. There we go. Okay, so I'll start by talking, as both Ryan and Amanda alluded to, a lot of my work is grounded in the idea of positive youth development. Idea that the work we do in sport, in providing sport opportunities for young people and coaching young people, is that we're working towards, again, sort of the word positive youth development, that we're working towards supporting young people in their growth towards thriving in the world as human beings, as athletes, in the whole wide, broad array of how they exist in the world as people. So I'm going to start with breaking that down a little bit and trying to sort of again pull out some key points here that might be relevant for the work we do in coaching minor rugby. So the first is I'm going to break it up kind of word by word here, because oftentimes, again, depending on the circles you're running, this can get a little bit sort of cliched, where it sort of just becomes like almost a nothing acronym. We say PYD or positive development. We kind of we stop thinking about what it actually means. So I'm going to start sort of just quickly by walking us through it, and that starts with the positive part. And basically, again, people may or may not be familiar with this sort of terminology, and I'll try not to go too deep into the academic jargon. Apologies in advance. But really what this means is what we call, it's an asset building approach, right? Basically, we're not trying to just get rid of the negatives, we're trying to build the positives. We can't get to thriving, to growth, to that higher level that Amanda talked about, that self-actualization, right? Just by not having anything bad happen, right? By not having bad stuff. We actually have to build the good things, right? And so that encompasses both positive experiences in sport, in rugby, right? As well as experience and growth and learning of positive characteristics and capabilities in the young people that we work with themselves, right? So it is that sort of that asset building, asset promotion, making good things happen idea, rather than just trying to crush the bad things. Again, in sport, it's often easy in a coaching setting, depending on your background, to fall into the sort of mistake correction default, right? I wait for bad things to happen and then I fix that, right? And the idea is that in order to get the most out of sport, we need to actually go beyond that and create the positive to whatever degree that we can. And then we'll get into that a little bit more. In doing that, again, there are some considerations though, right? So the first idea is that intentionality is critical. Right? There's a whole whack of research on youth sport saying that we often get into this sort of assumption that, like, well, I had a good experience in sport. Sport generally seems to be good things, so therefore it's like magic, and therefore anybody involved in sport will automatically have positive experiences and automatically good things will happen. We know that's not the case, and sometimes it's like exactly the opposite, depending on how it's organized, depending on how it's run, depending on, as both Amanda and Ryan have alluded to, the way that we do it creates that experience or not. Right? And so it's about bringing that intentionality, that active effort to create positive experiences and positive growth and learning experiences. We also have to consider, and this is some jargon here that I'll talk through quickly, the idea of person-context relations. That's what positive development actually is. It's not just young person in a bubble, right? It's about that young person in the context that they live, play, learn, eventually work, etc. Right? And the idea, one of the critical points in all of the research on positive youth development, is that true positive youth development includes mutual benefit for both that person, the developing young person, and the context that they're in. Right? So it goes beyond just sort of almost like a really self or inward focused thing to understanding how our young people both can, again, have these positive experiences and positive growth, but also contribute to and give back to the larger community as well, and have sort of a, rising tide floats all boats kind of idea, right? That idea of positive is linking young people with their positive growth and development to positive things in their environment that are mutually reinforcing, and we get positive spirals going there. Again, it sounds like the work that Amanda's doing with Turf there and the building future leaders. That's exactly what we're talking about. We actually have a research project just starting now looking at the idea of building future coaches, which is very much that same idea. And trying to understand, okay, so what are those experiences for young people as athletes in our sport that leads them to want to stay around, to contribute back to the next generation of young people coming through, to continue that cross-generational cycle there, right? So again, it's just sort of like broadening our focus a little bit. It's not just about the kid, it's about kid in context, which becomes a community that happens over time and hopefully keeps going and going and going. So that slightly broader view of what we're actually going for there. And the last thing, and I just want to bring to attention, and again, people may or may not have spent some time thinking about this, is the idea of what counts as positive. We tend to, in the positive youth development, right? We often sort of default to just, I know what the good stuff is, right? It's being a good person, right? And there may be, sort of common core shared elements across time and space of being a basically decent human being is. But when we really dig into it, there are a lot of culturally bound assumptions in terms of what that positive or what that adaptive is that we say we're going for. Those sort of the outcomes or the experiences that we want to develop in young people that we're hoping are the outcomes of our program. And the point is, as Amanda highlighted, right, to make those explicit. Let's actually talk through, are they representative of everyone we're trying to serve? Right? Or it might in any way, the assumptions that we're making, the unspoken assumptions about the good things that are supposed to happen, right? Might they be exclusive in any way? Create a not welcoming environment for people who might think and feel slightly differently, right? And at the very least, can we have those conversations about why do we value the things that we do? And how can we bring in others, have an open space so that people who maybe don't think exactly like us also feel comfortable joining the space and want to contribute to that space. And we can recognize that sort of the breadth of what positive means. Okay, again, I know I'm talking on a very big level, and I'm happy to jump to more specifics, especially in discussion if we have questions afterwards as well. But I wanted to sort of just plant these big picture seeds that can be kind of, again, evidence-based, research-informed principles that can help us think through what it is that we're trying to do in our minor rugby programs and our minor rugby coaching. So the next bit is the youth development part, right? And so I'm kind of lumping it together here, but I'm going to split it up in a second. Okay, and together, youth development, to me, it brings out what I like to kind of lump all together as thinking developmentally. Like if we're going to actually take this seriously in our coaching and in our programming for young people, it means we need to think developmentally. And what I mean by that is two parts. The first is the youth part. And it means we are working with young people, children and youth. Right? Those people, young people, change over time. They develop. Right, and they change through their development. So they, at wherever age group we're working with them at any particular moment, right, they have particular developmental characteristics and correspondingly particular developmental needs in terms of what they need from us, what experiences they need to have, right, that is going to fit where they're at right now, right, very much getting at Ryan's WIN acronym, right, like right now. What do they need from us right now in order to grow, to learn and progress, which is different, building on sort of the cliched thing in the youth sport world of like kids aren't many adults. Well, it's true, they're not. Kids are different from each other at different stages. So having a bit of an understanding of where kids are at physically, cognitively, so physical in terms of maturation, bodies, et cetera, cognitive in terms of their thinking, rationalization, et cetera, and socially and emotionally, right? Where are they at? And therefore, what do they need from us in their experiences? Because it's different depending on where kids are at, how old kids are, et cetera. And again, I'm going to be talking in broad strokes here. There is wild individual variability. So it really is about, again, as both Ryan and Amanda have been talking about, getting to know the people that we're working with individually. But this can at least give us a rough set or a rough start in terms of how to understand how we need to sort of tailor the work that we do for maximum effect. Once again, so thinking developmentally includes understanding the young people we're working with, the youth part, right? Where are they at? What do they need? The second part is the development part, right? Development implies time and change through time, right? A continuous progression, right? And so it's that explicit understanding that, say, we're working with kids for a season or, even a couple of seasons, right? That this isn't the full extent of, or it hopefully shouldn't be, as Ryan highlighted, in terms of coming back, right? We don't want this to be the extent of their rugby experience, right? We are, or hope to be, just one link on that chain of their hopefully lifelong journey in rugby. So that means that we need to be cognizant, we need to be aware of and think about, okay, so where is our link positioned, right? What are they building on in terms of what they're coming from, the previous link? And in order to be prepared and motivated to come back the next year and go on to the next link, what do they need to get from this experience? Because it doesn't need to be all the things, right? We don't need to make our 9-year-olds into international players in one season, right? We need to give them what they need, the experiences they have, so that they want to come back for the next year in the next age group up or whatever it is in that context, right? So that's kind of what I'll be talking through there, right? Again, so again, the positive, understanding the positive, that we're trying to actively create the positive, and then we need to think developmentally to make that positive happen, right? In terms of understanding the young people, right? And thinking in terms of development, where are we in the chain that is their hopefully lifelong journey through rugby, through Indian rugby. So I'm going to take a quick moment, try to keep an eye on time here, to talk quickly through in super broad strokes, some of what we know which again may be common knowledge for some people, maybe new for others, but from just general child development about what's going on with kids in, again, big bar strokes for the ages that are roughly covered in minor rugby. So I've clumped it. There's a billion different ways to clump it. Even in the research, it's not exactly defined this way. So I've gone with sort of what I think kind of makes sense. But one clump that we often work with is sort of the early middle childhood, or sort of the younger edge of the age group, sort of less than 8 years old, your real intro level little kids. And so developmentally, for these kids, their developmental characteristics, physically, I always say, like, these are my choice of words trying to summarize stacks of research here. So hopefully give me a little bit of leeway. But basically physically, sorry, I say they're figuring it out, right? The body is new. They don't know how it works yet, right? Running and talking at the same time is still difficult, right? We're just trying to understand how it all goes and how I can make the things all work together, right? So we're really at this point, again, it's not a well-oiled machine. We're just trying to figure out what this thing is, this body is, right? Cognitively, kids are working at a very concrete level, right? It's about what can I see, feel, touch, right? We're trying to get a sense of the world around us, right? So we haven't moved on yet to the very abstract concepts, right? Like we often talk about in rugby, like the idea of, for example, space, right? That's a very abstract idea, right? Doing something like a 2-on-1, you know what I mean? Where I'm going to draw a defender to me to create space for someone else that in the moments in the future, they will take advantage of to run. Like, that's a very advanced idea, right? So it's young kids process things and are primed to process. This is a good thing, right? They're primed to engage with the concrete, the real, the things that they can touch and do and actively engage with, right? Socio-emotionally, they're very what we call egocentric. It's all about me, right? At this level, kids aren't thinking about other people, right? I'm not thinking about what other people are thinking about. I'm thinking about what I'm experiencing right now, which makes sense because I'm trying to figure out how I work in this world, right? So everything is filtered through my own experience, right? So you ask me, you know, are you fast? I say, well, I ran really hard, therefore, yes, I'm fast, right? I'm not thinking about how that compares to other people, right? So again, so we're figuring it out, concrete, it's all about me. And position on the pathway, again, different frameworks, a different language, but essentially, this is, you know, initial exposure and foundation, right? This is the idea of, like, you know, anything else that's going to come is going to be built on this, and they're deciding now, is this the place that I like? Is this a fun thing? Is this a thing that I want to come back to and be part of? Because I like the people there and I like the experience, right? So that's where we're at, which means, and again, this is very simplified, broken down, but in order to tap into these things, we're looking for all action all the time. Talk about Ryan's, you know, no lines, right? The idea of we got to do stuff. I learn by doing. I'm experimenting. I'm trying to figure out how my body works, how the world works, how my brain works, right? I could be doing things to figure that out, right? We're looking for exploration, not perfection, right? Again, figuring out how the body works. We're not going to be able to perfect the perfect spin path here, right? But I need to try all of the things that make rugby interesting and fun, right? I need to dabble a little bit, right? So the point isn't fine tuning at this age group. They just need the chance to try, right? And again, as everybody's highlighted already, the idea of fun and love for the game. If that doesn't happen here, it's over, right? It's cut. I don't want to come back, right? So I need to enjoy that. Kids are primed to learn through play because it's fun, right? Kids engage through that, like the motivation of fun and enjoyment. It's a seeking activity which causes me to explore, to try new things, right? Kids don't learn to walk and talk by, you know, out of a textbook, right? They learn it because they want to get something fun. They want to experience something new, right? So our sport activities have to generate that, have to create that excitement, have to leverage that that's where kids are at right now, and they are primed to learn and have experiences by seeking out fun and enjoyment. So we need to lean into that in order to best take advantage of where they're at. If we jump up a little bit, so we're talking late childhood or adolescence, depending on how you define it, sort of, again, getting into that older childhood up into the, you know, maybe the 12 years old, and some minors flipping to juniors, heading to high school kind of thing. So we're teasing into adolescence, depending on developmental age, right? So the kids there, excuse me, now we're a little more physically developed, excuse me, we're starting to get to the point where, oh, if I work on things, I can get better at them, right? I have that capacity. I can bring things together a little bit, right? But we're also getting into that super fun time where stuff changing a lot, right? You know, I might be the super fast kid one day and then go through a growth spurt, and all of a sudden I can't run without tripping over my own feet, right? So we need to be cognizant of that as coaches, right? That we're like, things are changing. So judging competence, judging capacities based on what's going on right now is probably not based on very much, right? It could change tomorrow, right? So recognizing that I can learn to work on things, but I'm going to be experiencing a lot of stuff physically, even that is going to make that difficult. It's going to make that interesting, to say the least, right? Cognitively, I'm starting to become aware of me in relation to other people. I could start to understand comparison, right? And how well I'm doing in relation to others. That can be good, right? In terms of understanding, I can start to get a realistic sense of where I'm at. I can try and, if somebody's better than me, I can try and work to improve to that. It also can be sort of the flip side of that, sort of the dark side of that coin, right? I can start to get to the, oh, they're better than me. I probably shouldn't even try, right? So we have to be aware that this is prime, that we're coming into this age where social comparison is top of mind for young people, right? That's going to be there. And so we need to, again, work with that dynamic. Socio-emotionally, we're coming into the recognition, we're getting out of that egocentric to the idea of that I understand that other people think things and feel things, and that might be different from me, right? So we're starting to have that capacity, which means we can start to have some interesting conversations that involve understanding other people, right? And in terms of the position on the pathway, sorry, I'm gonna try and go a little faster here. Again, this is that sort of foundational skill set to allow them to continue on to future levels, whatever that is, high performance, recreation, whatever, right? We're trying to give them the skill set that allows them to engage further on. And so we're trying to develop those basic capacities to engage and to participate in rugby in a fun and meaningful way, right? So in terms of their needs, again, this just aligns very well. So I won't spend a ton of time talking about it, but with what Ryan and Amanda have said, but get the game going, right? They need that experience of what this is like. What is this thing called rugby, right? We got to try it, got to understand the things that are going on there so I can learn to adapt to it. We need to have a focus on mastery and effort. That's that self-focused learning, growth, improvement, rather than comparing yourself to other people, right? Because again, we now have the capacity to work at things and get better at them. We're also primed to compare ourselves to our peers, right? So we need to be really aware as coaches in terms of what we're saying is valuable, what we're saying matters here, right? Because the comparison is right there, right on the edge. So we want to make sure we don't want to get that spiral going. We want to lean into, okay, well, are you better than you were yesterday, right? Have you learned something today, right? Have you worked on something today? Also need diversified experiences, right? So again, this is the idea of developing the basics, setting the foundation, basically pre-puberty. The predictive effect, even if you're just thinking about like producing international athletes, the predictive effect before puberty is basically zero, right? So if we think we're picking out, the next superstar, I guarantee you it's just rolling the dice. It is no better than chance here, right? So we don't want to pigeonhole athletes, right? This is the all skills for all players, right? We need to do lots of things within rugby. We also need to think about their lives that exist outside of rugby. How does this fit into the other things that they're doing, other sports or other activities or opportunities for social time, right? At this place, we need to set that wide base so that they can engage with rugby and everything else in life in the most meaningful way so that they can learn and choose and adapt and grow. And again, talking about this idea of we can recognize others, this is where we can kind of get into start, planting seeds with the idea of the life skills, the leadership, the social skills, the understanding of others, right? We can really have sort of more advanced versions of that now because I can start to realize that, oh, they have a brain that might think different things than me or feel different things than I do. Anyways, hopefully that makes sense. I want to just sort of dip a toe into that the waters of again, trying to make sure that what we do as coaches and in designing our programs and our systems actually meets the needs of the kids that we're doing, so that thinking developmentally and trying to work to create adaptive, positive environments. Now, I've highlighted here, I'm going to maybe skip most of this just to get to the last thing to reserve some time for conversation. Highlighted some of these you will probably know about or have heard about. I chose them just because there is actually also some either published or emerging empirical evidence, so systematically collected data about sports systems that have tried to buy in and like either really engaging with or sometimes totally redesigning the way that they do things in order to try and generate positive experiences by thinking developmentally, at least in my terms, right? So again, England Rugby very much sort of with the vibe in terms of the new rules and laws and the developments there, but basically tracked it and it works. There's research evidence to say it works. Kids come back more, they have more fun, more touches, more skill development. They like their teammates more, they like coaches more. right? It's all good stuff. Thanks to USA Hockey, basically bleeding players, was losing athletes faster than any other sport in the US for many years, did a redesign to prioritize the needs. So what started going cross ice, small games, focus on skills and fun and play. They are now outstripping every other sport in the US in terms of their recruitment and retention numbers, right? And actually getting pretty good too when you think about the talent development streams, right? You probably heard the Scandinavian ideas. It's been in the news a lot. Again, just redesigning, getting away from high-level competition early and basically allowing kids to be kids and having experiences in sport that fit kids. All right, and New Zealand actually just going in the same way. I'm happy to talk about any of these in more detail, but just to say it's happening, probably things that are happening in your own clubs and the own places you're working with. And we actually have evidence to suggest those sorts of efforts, they make a difference for the young people in the moment and over time. And then circling full back, and this is sort of the last thing, wrapping up, all of that stuff we're talking about, positive youth development, thinking developmentally, the systems and the way they work, the key ingredient, and this is my own personal research bent, but I think the evidence justifies it, is coaches, right? You're the people who enact this stuff, who are the key link, the frontline workers who actually interact with kids, right? So either you as coaches or the coaches that you work with in your programs, right? That's what makes a difference. And I'll just highlight two things and then I'm stopping and I'll shut up. It's the idea that those relationships matter. The single biggest predictor of anything in youth sport for like pick any good outcome that you want. The single strongest predictor is the quality of the relationship with the significant adult in that setting, which is usually the coach, right? It matters. And last thing, like in no way am I saying that the quality of our teaching doesn't matter. It very much does. But in terms of predicting the quality of the relationship, the human side is the most important. The small things. Do you ask about life outside, the tests they had? How's their sister? Whatever it is. Recognizing that that little person is a person and exists outside of the rugby stuff that we do. That makes a difference. So, all right, I'll stop with that. And hopefully we have some time left.
Awesome. Thanks, Carl. Yeah, and we're aware that we're running out of time. I have a few questions to get to, a few things we want to touch on, but I'll quickly come back. There were some questions, Carl, earlier on for you. Just a clarification on that mutual benefit. If I said if he's trying to understand if one is person and two is the context, then the benefit for both 1 and 2 is what we're looking at. So mutually
Exactly.
context.
Yes, exactly. We want things that allow the person to benefit, but allow then the context to benefit from that person benefiting. I'm not making this any clearer, but yes, we want both to mutually generate. We want to understand. We want to help people help others. Essentially, is the short version of that.
Yeah. And then another one said, thanks for mentioning space as an abstract cognitive concept. He said, would it affect proprioception, for example, or the understanding of others' position relative to them? And any insights on developmental anchors per age groups?
That's a good question. Again, I'd sort of go in the concrete there. So stop myself from going off into a crazy sciencey thing. But if we think of thinking and perception of the environment, we now know that it's very embodied, and especially kids who work at very concrete levels. The idea of, like Ryan mentioned, like evading, so little like tag games and things like that. Even if the kid can't like consciously say, "Oh, I saw that, therefore I stepped this way and responded this way," but the act of running around and trying not to bump into people will engage those capacities. Will sort of hit in that kind of like middle school era. And again, different people with more experience can feel free to chime in on this, but there is sort of the moment we can understand other people, and they have a mind that I don't have, we're clicking into similar sorts of things where I can understand that they would do something that I'm not doing right now, right? So then we can, which is sort of a foundational for in a team invasive sport like rugby, right? Where I can understand that somebody else will have a plan, and there's maybe a defender who doesn't know what I'm going to do, right? And I can try and make them think with one thing so that we can do something else. Right. So we can beat our heads against a wall trying to teach that to a 6-year-old, or we can just wait 2 years and teach it in about 20 minutes. And have more fun with the 7-year-old doing tag games.
follow up here. It says, so using evading to teach strategic attacking.
I think that's, and I might punt for more details to Ryan and or Amanda on these, but I actually do think, especially for young kids, like even the idea of passing for very young kids is a complicated concept, right? Just running with a ball and it is a good idea. We could start to understand how I relate to other people and what happens when I do something or what I have to do to get away from somebody else. And those are those foundational skills. And so that's like, it might be frustrating if you want to get to like really advanced stuff, but that is pretty good. And that is a great foundational skill. And the kids will be active and doing stuff. And then you can keep checking in and trying and find out when we say, when does kids recognize like, oh, this might be a moment. If I don't want to get tagged, I can pop the ball to someone else. Ah, that makes sense, right? But there's going to be a line there below which I'm not thinking why that I'm just chucking it because you told me I'm supposed to chuck it to someone else, right? So, sorry, I could go off on rants on this, but others might have better insight into this one.
I don't know if either of you want to jump in. I've got one more question here as well.
Maybe just to reinforce that idea of the game, just playing the game, give them an opportunity to play. And if you lay out a challenge, you don't have to say what the challenge is. The challenge is to get your flag tagged or to get the ball in the hoop or do something like that. They get to figure out how to beat that game, beat that challenge, and along the way they might learn the skill. Versus you must take this ball and pass it like this to that person. Okay, yeah, I can do that if you make my hands do that, but I haven't really learned much in that space. So I think that might be what I'm kind of getting at.
So another question here says, curious to know or hear appropriate ages for youth learning how to use their strength. Movement and skills seem to get priority. Is there a developmental reason for this, or can/should kids learn about their strength at any age? Anyone thoughts on sort of physical strength? And
I'll just maybe before punting to the others, maybe more practical knowledge in this. I will say strength is just a tough one because especially with young kids, that is changing all the time. So it's not an absolute thing like it is with an adult. You know, maybe someone who might be relatively stronger or relatively weaker, and that's going to stay roughly the same for quite some time. Kids fluctuate wildly all the time. So even if it is something you want to adapt, recognize that that might go backwards. And that's okay and normal. So that's my only initial thought.
Yeah. Anything else? Otherwise, I'll fire a few rapid questions for you to finish us off. Some of them you've probably already answered, so we'll just give you each kind of a quick, one or two liner. So first question is, why do you love rugby and or coaching? We can go in the same order if that's easiest. Ryan, want to start us off?
The connections it built with people is why I love the game. There's a lot of names I see on the call that I've connected with. There's the faces on the screen that I can see. It's given me so many opportunities to go so many different places as a player, as a coach, as a ref, as an administrator, and that all happened through connections with people. So that ability to bring people together is cliche, and I think what everybody says, but it's so true about this game. That's why I do what I do and why I'm on here at 8:30 tonight.
I love that it's a values-based sport, and I really love the values of the game. I think it's those values that create healthy, vibrant communities, and in the work and the scope of turf, healthy, vibrant young people. And I think that leads to the culture that's unique to rugby as well. So I'd say it's the values of the game for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say something that isn't just echoing exactly that, which I definitely do. For me, I'd say kind of touches on a bit of both, is the idea of the cross age connections and shared values that happen. So you still seeing the young kid for the first time and realizes that they're wearing the same jersey as this old person is wearing, and that cool high school kid, and that you're all part of the same thing. I just think that's a really cool thing. It doesn't happen all the time.
Next question is, what is something that you've learned recently or that you're excited to learn more about? Short answers, remember. I'm sure many of you could go on for a while.
As I said, I'm currently doing a master's part-time, and this idea of deliberate play and deliberate practice, which again, I've read a few things, have read a few of your pieces on this, so really interested to kind of explore that and understand what that means.
I'm really into social justice through sport right now, and looking at untapped groups or groups that we typically don't engage in the sport as a means of creating change. So that's really something I'm really interested in right now.
For me, I second the social justice is an inclusion thing. We're exploring that a lot, but for me, it's that cross-generational flow. How do we keep generating those experiences for people who give back in the future? And can we actively create those experiences?
Love that. Your biggest piece of advice or take-home message for everyone listening? And it might be something you've already said, so maybe you're just reiterating.
Keep having fun. Keep having fun. I all the time, if I'm at a rugby field or if I'm doing these types of things, be yourself, have fun. I'd love to enjoy the game. If it's not fun, what's the point of doing it? So keep having fun, keep enjoying it, and keep connecting with each other. And I might not have the opportunity, but thank you to everybody for what you do in the game on the call. Just wanted to make sure that was said.
Yeah, I think for me, it's that your work matters. You're making a difference, and there's days where you're just like, oh, but you're making a difference, and it's the long game. It's always the long game. So you're making a difference.
And for me, again, kind of a variation on the theme here, but fun is better than perfect. And there's a tendency in sport as sort of an achievement context, I always want to really get precise and always focus on the things that aren't going well. But if we're having fun and we want to come back and it's meaningful, we're doing some good stuff there, and it's okay if it's messy.
Absolutely. The last question I had, I think you all kind of answered already, so we won't get into that. I know we're over our time, so it's just about sort of resources you'd recommend, and you've each done a bit of that. But if you have anything extra, send it to us, and we'll make sure we send it out with the recording and slides on that. So with that, just thank you so much, and I'll hand it over to Catherine to finish this off.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you to all of our panelists. You found it very informative what you said today, and you taught us all to ask some big questions, such as what's important now. People like us do this. And I really enjoyed each of your presentations. And thank you to all of the coaches and individuals who joined us tonight. You are all, as Amanda said, making a difference, just being out here learning more from some of our leaders in our community. So we appreciate you taking the hour and a half out of your night to come and join us tonight. So thank you all. And as Jocelyn said, this was recorded. It will be shared along with the panelist slides and any resources that they send us at the end. And everyone who's attended will receive 2 PD points for attending as well. So that will be added at some point to your locker, but I have it all recorded. So anyways, have a good night.
If you loved this one, there's 7 more coming. So
yes.
Take a look.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.